Alrighty boys, so getting ready to put the fuel tank back in. So I did repaint the tank. I used the gray or black hammered paint, and it's the same stuff I used on the roll cage, and this stuff always turns out really good. So the tank did have the factory coating on it, so I just took a wire wheel and kind of buzzed it up, cleaned it up as much as I could, and just went over everything with the black hammered paint, and it turned out really nice. Here's what it looks like on the bottom side. I did go ahead and do 2 coats on this, so it's actually pretty thick. And this paint, to get this texture, I think it has some kind of like epoxy or something in it that gives this texture. So this does take some time to cure. I think it's like a 7-day full cure time. It's dry to the touch in an hour, but underneath, if you press on it or whatever, it takes a while to cure. In between these flaps a little bit, it's still kind of wet in between there where these 2 layers are, but other than that it's pretty good because it's been sitting for a couple days. So I did finish up the hanger with 2 new Volvo 450s and then did coat the top of it with the same paint. 8A in feed, 6A in return, and then I used this awesome bulkhead that has this snap ring to hold everything in there. It has a removable plug here, removable plug on the bottom side. I built this a while back, but I was able to reuse the factory level sender and then have that all wired in. This is just going to be a ground wire that comes in, which grounds the section that's welded onto the level sender, and then there's a wire that comes back out that's going to come out the top wire here. So I'll have the ground in, the level sender out, and then pump 1 positive, pump 1 negative, pump 2 positive, pump 2 negative. That should work out pretty good. These are 2 new pumps. I was going to reuse my old 450s that I had in the Ranger, but they were sitting in the tank and I had them like parked outside for a while, a couple of years old, and I just decided to test them before I mounted them on this thing, and they were both seized up. So kind of glad I decided to actually test them before I just set them up and threw them in the tank, because they both would just like kind of click a little bit and then the wire would start to heat up. So I'm glad I tested that, because that would have not been good. I got to get the tape off of here that I just masked these off, and then I do have a little rubber gasket that goes here. I picked up some nylock nuts. So these are just a M8 by 125 bolt that I welded onto the backside just to have a stud there. So I'll get all that going and then mock it up and see how much room I have. I haven't test fitted any of it yet, so I don't know how much room I'm going to have up here for the lines or the wiring. So we'll see what I got to do. Oh boy, check that out. I think that looks pretty good with that thing on there, and hopefully this position is good for the wiring. See what that looks like. Okay, next I'm going to be setting up some fuel injectors. So I decided I'm just going to go with decapped injectors. If you don't know what decapped injectors are, there is a little plate that is like welded onto the tip of the injector that has 3 or 4 holes in it to help distribute the spray pattern. So if you grind that tip off, you can triple the size of the injector. So I went ahead and I already did 1 set. I have 3 sets right now. So you can see that there's just one little ball in the middle of it where the pintle of the injector is. So that's what it looks like when it's decapped. So you can see that there's a brown weld all the way around the cap, and then there is 4 holes in the tip that distribute the pattern. So I'm going to grind those off. But first I got to get all these injectors out. So these are a little tough to get out of these rails, but usually a good practice with... Oh, that clip came off. Usually a good practice with decapping is to take 2 full sets and then flow 2 sets and see if you can make 1 full set out of the 2 that matches the best. So just try to get the best flow match. So I'm going to do 3 sets. Might be a little bit excessive, but I think as long as I have them, I might as well decap them and check them. So I've used decaps on LS before pretty successfully, and actually Kelvin Nelson from the Nivlac 57 channel just won 6 Summer Sick Week Freaks class with decapped injectors on the same engine. So I figure if it's good enough for that, it'll be good enough to push me down the road for a little while. Oh, man, these are hard to get out. So there's a little bit better view of the 4 holes. That brown ring is the weld. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this O-ring off, and then I'll be able to get the cap off. We can just grind around the tip. And you can use a pick or whatever on these. I usually just like to push the O-ring like that and flop it over. It seems like it works pretty good for me. And then I've just been using this little needle nose that fits in this groove and pry the cap a little bit to pop it off. And I'm going to use the drill method that Matt from Sloppy Mechanics used in a video that's 7 years old titled Revisiting Decapped Injectors New Method. But I'm going to put a little twist on it, and I'm going to put a wrench on the end of it to hold it. Alright, so I swung down by my friend Hunter's house. He has the Hunter Tune YouTube channel and huntertune.com. And we just did a little quick and dirty flow test just to flow match everything. He did a couple different cycles. Did a wide open test, a variable speed test, a gear shifting test. So there's a few different things that we did. And just kind of picked the ones that we thought flowed the best. And the set that I ended up with all ended up between 66 to 68 pounds. So that's like within 3%. So it should be a pretty good match. So I do have the injectors back. They're all flow matched. And surprisingly, they turned out pretty good. They're all like 66 to 68 pounds. There was only one of them out of the initial set that I didn't use out of there because it was a little high or a little bit low. So I ended up bringing 3 sets. One of the sets didn't even work. That whole set, none of them worked. There was only one of them that was like kind of half spring and the other ones were locked up. The one I didn't even bring along because it was so bent. So I'm glad I brought 3 sets. Alright, so I spent a bit of time over the last couple of days getting this fuel pressure regulator mounted. I was being kind of picky about it. I ended up remaking this bracket 3 times. It's just a pretty simple bracket with 1 bolt that holds it into the block and the 2 bolts on the back. Fuel rail I modified. I cut the factory tube that comes off of it and then welded a 6AN bung on there. And then I also welded a 8AN bung on the back to come from the tank. So it'll come in here, out the 6AN, through a 45 through a 150 degree fitting, and then I have a 120 out the bottom that's going to come out, and then the line will come out here underneath the rail. This will be an AN line. I just have this mocked up here to show kind of what it'll look like, and I don't think I'm going to go over making all the fuel lines and doing all that stuff. I'll just do that off camera because that's kind of boring, but I like how this thing turned out. I might keep the mechanical gauge on the front, and then I was thinking about drill and tapping the back to put a sensor on it. Maybe you could run like a sensor straight out, or maybe even at a 45 there, but that'd be kind of cool to have the mechanical in the front and then actually have a sensor on it in the back. So then fuel system will be done. Aside from the wiring, I do have to run the clutch line. I'm gonna have to pop the intake off and make a gasket for that, and then reconnect the steering linkage. I forgot to reconnect it when I put the engine in, but that shouldn't be too big of a deal. So that's all we got for now. See you in the next one.